What do you do when the happiest day of your life suddenly becomes a nightmare? Anya stood there, radiant in her wedding gown, ready to embrace a dream come true. But her perfect day shattered when her mother-in-law accused her of disrespect and contempt. In an instant, her world turned upside down. As Preston stood by, confused at first, the truth came out. His mother's manipulations and his violent reaction. The room went silent as Anya realized the man she had just married was capable of this. Stay tuned to see how Anya takes control of her life, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of strength and courage. Laughter and melodies filled the air, a symphony of joy that should have marked the happiest day of my life. I'm Anya, and as I stood there in my elegant white gown, feeling like royalty, everything seemed perfect. It was a dream, one I'd longed for, until in an instant it all came crashing down. "Anya, dear, could you come here for a moment?" My mother-in-law's voice cut through the music, sharp and almost commanding. I forced a smile at my friend, excused myself, and made my way toward her. The stiffness in her posture was impossible to ignore. Her smile didn't reach her eyes, and the tension in the air felt suffocating. "What is it, Mrs. Brown?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, my smile polite, but I couldn't shake the unease that had suddenly settled in. "It's about the way you look at me, Anya," she said, her tone colder than I'd ever heard. "I know contempt when I see it, and you have it all over your face. I am your husband's mother, and I deserve respect, not this disdain." Her words hit me like a slap, my mind racing to make sense of what she was accusing me of. "Mrs. Brown, I think you've misunderstood." "I have nothing but respect for you," I said, my voice trembling slightly as confusion flooded me. "Respect? Ha!" she scoffed, her eyes narrowing. "I see the way you roll your eyes at me, the sighs when I speak. You think I don't notice? You've even turned my son against me." Her voice rose, growing louder with each word. I could feel the eyes of the guests beginning to turn in our direction, the room growing heavier with the attention. I fought to keep my composure, but her words were like daggers. Before I could respond, Preston appeared at my side, his brow furrowed with concern. "Mom, what's going on here?" he asked, looking between the two of us, his voice laced with confusion. "Your wife, Preston, she's been nothing but disrespectful to me," Mrs. Brown said, her voice trembling with emotion, her hands clutching Preston's arm. "She looks down on me, and today of all days, she's been the worst." Her tears started to fall, staining her cheeks as she pulled him closer, the drama escalating for everyone to see. "Anya, is this true?" Preston asked, his face shifting from confusion to disbelief, his gaze searching mine. His question cut through the tension, and I felt my heart sink as I prepared to answer. "No, it's not true," I replied, my voice firm but steady. "I've done nothing to disrespect her. She's lying." "Preston, I'm your mother. Would I lie to you?" Mrs. Brown cried out, her grip tightening on his arm. Tears streamed down her face, the drama thickening in the air. For a moment, time seemed to slow. The room seemed to disappear around me as I watched Preston's face shift from concern to something darker. Anger. His eyes flickered with something I couldn't place, something that made my stomach twist. Without warning, he reached down, took off his shoe, and in one swift motion struck me on the head. The sound of the impact rang through the now silent room, and I froze. My hand instinctively rose to my scalp, my fingers feeling the sting of the blow. The guests gasped in shock, but no one moved. The world stood still as I stood there, feeling 1,000 emotions collide: hurt, betrayal, rage, all swirling inside me like a storm. I wasn't sure what to say or even how to react. "How could you?" I whispered, my voice small, not directed at anyone in particular. I wasn't just asking Preston or his mother. It was a question to the universe itself, as if searching for an explanation for this nightmare that had suddenly become my reality. Preston, realizing what he had done, stammered, "Anya, I didn't mean it. I was just—" But I didn't let him finish. "No," I said, my voice firm and steady despite the storm brewing inside me. "You've shown me exactly who you are. The pain of being hit was nothing compared to the pain of realizing the man I had just married was capable of this. I turned away from them both, knowing this moment had changed everything. I faced the guests, most of whom were still staring in stunned silence. "I'm sorry you had to witness this," I said, my voice calm though my heart raced. "Please continue to enjoy the celebration. I need a moment alone." Without waiting for a response, I walked out of the room. The music had stopped and the laughter had died down. The world outside seemed so different now. The joy and excitement of the day, a distant memory. I found a quiet corner away from the noise and chaos, my mind racing with thoughts of what had just happened. How had everything fallen apart so quickly? Just moments ago, I had been filled with happiness, believing I was beginning a new chapter of my life, and now I felt like my entire world had been turned upside down. My mother-in-law's accusations, Preston's assault, the judgmental stares of the guests, it was all too much to bear. I needed time to think, to process everything. Could I really continue with this marriage after what had just happened? Could I trust Preston again? The questions weighed heavily on my mind as I stood there, feeling lost and unsure of what to do next. But one thing was clear. My life had changed and there was no going back. The perfect day I had imagined was gone, replaced by something darker and more painful. What I had to do now was figure out how to move forward, even if that meant doing it alone. I walked away from the crowd, and as soon as I did, I could hear the whispers start behind me, but I refused to let them affect me. I kept my head held high, knowing that this was not the end for me. Instead, it was the beginning of something new. My mind started racing, forming a plan. I wasn't going to let this humiliation go unanswered. Once I reached the privacy of the bridal suite, I allowed myself to finally feel the emotions I had been holding back. Tears streamed down my face, but they weren't just tears of pain. They were also tears of determination. This moment wouldn't break me. I would not be a victim. I would rise above this and become a victor. My resolve was stronger than ever. After everything that had happened, I knew it was time to act. I couldn't let them get away with it. The first step in my plan was clear. Gather undeniable proof, solid evidence of the way Preston and his mother had mistreated me. I wasn't going to leave anything to chance. I decided to hire a private investigator to help me. Mr. Harris had a reputation for being discreet, thorough, and effective, exactly the kind of person I needed for this delicate situation. "Mr. Harris, I need your help," I said when I called him, my voice steady, but I could feel the weight of my words. "My husband, Preston, and his mother haven't exactly been kind to me. I need evidence of their behavior." "What kind of evidence are we looking for?" Mr. Harris asked, his voice calm and professional. "Anything that shows a pattern," I explained, "emotional, financial, or even legal abuse. I need proof of what they've been doing." "Understood," he replied. "I'll start with surveillance and a background check. I'll dig into their pasts, their finances, everything. You'll get what you need." With Mr. Harris on my side, I finally felt like I was regaining control. I began recording every interaction with Preston and his mother, every phone call, every conversation. No detail was too small. I wasn't going to leave anything to chance. Amid the chaos, my best friend, Sophie, became my lifeline. She was there for me through every moment, supporting me when the burden felt too heavy to bear. "Sophie, I don't know how I'd get through this without you," I admitted one day when the weight of it all seemed unbearable. "You don't have to do this alone," she reassured me, her voice a steady anchor. "I'm here, always. So, what's the plan?" "I'm collecting evidence," I told her, explaining the steps I was taking. "Mr. Harris is helping too. I want to expose Preston and his mother for who they really are." Sophie looked at me, concern clouding her features. "Be careful, Anya," she warned. "They won't see this coming, and when they do, they'll be furious." "I know," I nodded, "but I can't let them get away with this." In the weeks that followed, the evidence began to pile up. It was becoming impossible to ignore the pattern. The phone calls revealed Preston's true nature, his tone often aggressive, dismissive, and demeaning. The financial records Mr. Harris uncovered exposed just how much control Mrs. Brown had over his assets. Some of the transactions were suspicious, raising serious concerns about potential fraud. The deeper we dug, the darker the picture became. One evening, Sophie and I sat down to review everything we had gathered. The weight of it all hit me again as we went over the documents. But then something caught my eye. "Look at this, Sophie," I said, pointing to a series of bank statements on the table. "They're moving large sums of money, but where is it all going?" "And these emails," Sophie added, scanning through them. "It sounds like they're planning something, but we don't know what yet." "We need to connect the dots," I said, feeling the weight of everything we were uncovering. "This isn't just about emotional abuse anymore. There's a whole web of lies and manipulation going on." "Oh." Sophie's eyes widened as she stared at the evidence in front of us. "Anya, we're onto something big here," she said, her voice filled with both excitement and fear. The more I delved into the evidence, the clearer it became that Preston and his mother were involved in more than just toxic behavior. This went beyond their mistreatment of me. They were hiding something much bigger, something possibly illegal. I could feel the truth slowly unraveling, and I was determined to see this through to the end. As the days passed, I became more focused on my goal. I wasn't just collecting evidence for myself anymore. I was uncovering a story of deceit and manipulation that needed to be exposed. Preston and his mother had spent years weaving this web of lies, but now I had the power to tear it all apart. There was still much to be done, but I was no longer the helpless bride they had tried to humiliate. I was stronger than they had ever realized, and soon the truth would come to light. This wasn't just about getting justice for myself. It was about making sure they faced the consequences of their actions. I wasn't sure how things would end, but one thing was clear. I was ready to fight, and I wasn't going to back down. The whispers of that day were nothing compared to the roar of truth that was about to come crashing down on them. I would no longer be a victim of their games. I would be the one in control. I started to piece it all together, looking over the documents again, and I realized something shocking. "I think they're embezzling funds from Preston's company," I said to Sophie, my voice barely above a whisper. "These documents they're incriminating." Sophie looked at me, her face serious. "Anya, this is really serious. You need to be careful. They won't take kindly to being exposed." "I know," I said, feeling a mix of fear and determination. "But I can't back down. Not now. There's too much at stake." The evidence wasn't just about how cruel they had been to me. It was more than that. It pointed to serious criminal activity. I had everything I needed to make a move, and it was time to come up with a plan to bring them to justice. It was also time to take back control of my life. "Sophie," I said, feeling the weight of my decision, "I'm going to expose them publicly." Sophie hesitated for a moment, knowing the risks involved. "Anya, that's risky. You're playing with fire, but if anyone can do it, it's you." With Sophie by my side and the evidence in my hands, I felt stronger than I had in a long time. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. This was about justice, about making sure Preston and his mother faced the consequences of what they had done. It was time to show the world who they truly were. The next step was clear. I had to bring everything out into the open. I decided to organize an event, pretending it was for a big announcement. I invited friends, family, and even a few media contacts, people who would help get the story out. The venue was lavish, with an atmosphere full of excitement and curiosity. Everyone was eager to hear the news. As I stood at the front of the room, I took a deep breath. The time had come. "Thank you all for coming," I began, keeping my voice steady and my expression calm. Preston and his mother, Mrs. Brown, stood beside me smiling. They had no idea what was about to happen. "Anya, darling, we're so proud of you," Preston said, his voice sweet but insincere. "Whatever the announcement is, we support you." His words felt like poison, but I stayed composed. "I've gathered you all here to share some important truths," I said, pausing to gauge the room's reaction. "Truths about my marriage and about the Brown family." Mrs. Brown's smile faltered. "Truths?" she repeated, her voice shaky with a mix of confusion and fear. "Anya, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the abuse, the lies, and the illegal activities that have been going on behind the scenes," I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. The room went silent. The tension was thick, and all eyes were on me.
Anya, have you lost your mind?
Preston's face turned red, his anger barely under control. Quite the opposite, Preston, I said calmly. I've never been more sane, and I've never been more sure of what I need to do. I gestured to the screen behind me. Exhibit A, I announced as the video began to play. It was a recording of one of our many abusive conversations. The crowd gasped as Preston's voice, thick with anger and cruelty, echoed through the room. The murmurs spread like wildfire, and I saw Mrs. Brown's face drain of color. Her hands trembled, betraying her shock. This is just the beginning, I said, holding up a folder filled with documents. These papers show financial irregularities, embezzlement, fraud. It's all here.
You can't do this, Anya,
Preston's voice boomed, a mix of desperation and threat.
You're ruining everything.
I locked eyes with him, my voice steady and firm. I'm not ruining anything, Preston. I'm exposing the truth that everyone deserves to see. The media personnel who had been invited for this very moment clicked their cameras feverishly, capturing every second of this dramatic revelation. There was no turning back. This was it.
Anya, please.
Mrs. Brown's voice was barely audible, her usual air of confidence crumbling. Let's talk about this privately. There's no need for this public display. I shook my head, refusing to step back. No, Mrs. Brown, no more private discussions. The time for hiding is over. As I continued to reveal more evidence, the room buzzed with reactions. Some guests sat frozen in shock. Others shook their heads in disbelief. Whispers rippled through the crowd, but no one could deny what they were seeing. Preston and Mrs. Brown stood motionless, their well-crafted facades crumbling, exposing the truth beneath. This is my story, I said, my voice strong and unwavering. A story of surviving abuse and standing up against injustice. I refuse to be a victim any longer. The event ended in a whirlwind of activity. Reporters rushed to surround me, firing questions from every angle, while many guests approached to offer words of support and admiration. I had done it. I had exposed the truth. I stood tall, maintaining my composure through it all. It was a moment of triumph, the moment I finally reclaimed my power and my voice. But this wasn't the end. The courtroom would be the next step, the place where everything would be resolved once and for all. As I sat in that stark, imposing room, a mix of nervousness and determination washed over me. My lawyer sat beside me, ready to fight for justice. This was the final act of my journey, and I was ready to see it through to the very end. I couldn't help but notice the unease in Preston and Mrs. Brown's eyes across the courtroom. Their once confident faces were now etched with anxiety. As the trial began, my lawyer stood tall and confident.
Your Honor, we are here to present the case against Preston and Mrs. Brown,
he said, his voice steady and unwavering. This isn't just about a divorce. This is about years of emotional and financial abuse that Anya has endured. From across the room, Preston leaned in, his voice low, laced with venom.
Anya, you can't win this. You're going too far.
I met his gaze without hesitation, my voice calm but resolute. This isn't about winning, Preston. It's about justice. It's about exposing who you really are. The trial moved forward, and my lawyer laid out the evidence with surgical precision. There were the recordings of Preston's cruel words, the financial documents that revealed the depths of their manipulation, and every shred of proof that painted a painful, undeniable portrait of the life I had been forced to live. Each piece of evidence was irrefutable.
Your Honor, as you can see, the evidence is overwhelming, my lawyer continued, his tone firm. We are not only seeking the divorce, but also legal action for the wrongs committed against my client.
Mrs. Brown, clearly shaken, tried to offer a defense. Your Honor, this is all just a misunderstanding. Anya is exaggerating, she stammered, her voice trembling, betraying her own lack of belief in her words. I didn't flinch. My gaze never left hers as I spoke, my words cutting through the room. Exaggerating? The evidence speaks for itself. You can't hide from the truth anymore. The judge listened intently, reviewing every piece of evidence, every word spoken. Time seemed to stretch on, but finally, after what felt like an eternity, she rendered her decision. In light of the overwhelming evidence, I grant the divorce and order legal action against both Preston and Mrs. Brown for their conduct. When the gavel struck, a wave of relief and vindication flooded over me. It was over. I had faced them, stood up for myself, and fought for what was right. I had emerged victorious. The long, painful chapter of my life was finally closed. With the legal battles behind me, it was time for me to start fresh. I found a small, peaceful home in the countryside, far away from the chaos and toxic drama of my past. The serenity and beauty of the place were exactly what I needed. I sat on the porch, a warm cup of tea in my hands, and let my eyes drift across the peaceful landscape. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, birds sang in the distance, and the sun cast its golden rays across the fields. For the first time in as long as I could remember, a profound sense of peace washed over me. This was my fresh start, a life free from the lies, manipulation, and pain. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had been worth every step. I hadn't just survived, I had triumphed. I had found my inner strength, reclaimed my voice, and now I was free. As the sun began to set, casting a soft, warm glow over the horizon, I smiled. I was exactly where I was meant to be. The future may be uncertain, but it was mine to shape, filled with hope, healing, and happiness. This was my story of triumph. The story of a woman who refused to be silenced. I had stood tall against all odds, and now I was living a life of freedom and peace. What do you do when your life seems perfect, only to have it torn apart by betrayal and humiliation in front of everyone you love? Do you stay and endure the pain, or do you fight back? Anya had dreamed of her wedding day for years. She was ready to start a new chapter with Preston, but nothing could prepare her for the shocking moment when her mother-in-law accused her of disrespect. And when Preston, the man she trusted, struck her in front of everyone, the reality of her marriage shattered in an instant. The pain of being physically hit was nothing compared to the realization that her husband was capable of such violence. The dream she had built was gone, replaced by something dark and painful. But Anya didn't let this moment define her. Instead of crumbling, she took control of the situation. She hired a private investigator, collected evidence, and exposed the truth about Preston and his mother's manipulation. When they thought they had her cornered, she fought back. Not just for herself, but for justice. The room went silent as Anya revealed the truth, and the consequences of their actions began to unfold. Now, Anya is free. She's walked away from the toxic chaos of her past, leaving behind the lies and cruelty. She's reclaimed her life and found peace. So, what do you think? Would you have stayed and tried to make it work, or would you have walked away like Anya did? Let's discuss it in the comments. And if you found this story empowering, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.
The glint of gold caught my eye as I reached for the crumpled receipt in Jack's jacket pocket. My heart raced as I smoothed out the paper, revealing a jaw-dropping sum for a piece of jewelry I'd never seen. Confusion turned to dread as I realized this wasn't a surprise gift for me. "Jack?" I called out, my voice wavering. "Can you come here for a minute?" My husband of 10 years sauntered into our bedroom, his easy smile fading as he saw the receipt in my trembling hand. "Laura, what are you doing going through my things?" I held up the damning evidence. "What's this? Because I know it's not for me." Jack's face hardened, and in that moment, I knew. The air left my lungs as if I'd been punched. He didn't even try to lie. "It's for Molly," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "I'm sorry you found out this way, but maybe it's for the best." "Molly?" I repeated, the name tasting bitter on my tongue. "Who the hell is Molly?" Jack sighed, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "She's someone I've been seeing. For a while now." The world tilted on its axis. I gripped the edge of the dresser to steady myself. "How long is a while, Jack?" 6 months, he admitted, not meeting my eyes. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of betrayal. I thought of all the late nights at the office, the sudden business trips. How could I have been so blind? Why? I choked out, tears threatening to spill over. Jack's gaze snapped to mine, a flash of anger in his eyes. You really want to know why, Laura? Because Molly can give me what you can't. The words hit me like a slap. We'd been trying for a baby for years with no success. Each negative test had been a knife to my heart, but I'd always believed we were in it together. How wrong I'd been. That's not fair, I whispered, my voice breaking. We've been through this together. We talked about adoption, about... It's not the same. Jack interrupted, his composure cracking. I want my own child, Laura. A legacy, and Molly. She understands that. I felt sick. So what? You're just going to throw away 10 years of marriage for some younger model who might be able to pop out a kid? Jack's silence was answer enough. I sank onto the bed, my legs no longer able to support me. Does your mother know? A flicker of guilt crossed his face. Helen, she's met Molly. She likes her. Of course she did. My mother-in-law had never approved of me, always hinting that Jack could do better. I guess she'd finally gotten her wish. Get out, I said, my voice low and dangerous. Laura, get out! I stood, finding strength in my anger. I can't even look at you right now. Just go. Jack hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He grabbed his keys and wallet from the nightstand. At the doorway, he paused. I am sorry, Laura. I never meant to hurt you. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Well, you did a piss-poor job of that, didn't you? The front door slammed, and I was alone. The silence of the house pressed in on me, suffocating. I looked around the room we'd shared for so long, seeing it with new eyes. How many lies had been told here? How many nights had he lain beside me thinking of her? My gaze fell on our wedding photo on the dresser. With a cry of rage, I swept it to the floor, glass shattering. As I stared at the broken frame, a realization hit me. My life, the future I'd planned, lay in pieces at my feet, but as the initial shock began to fade, another emotion took its place. Determination. I might be down, but I was far from out. Jack and his precious Molly had no idea what was coming. I reached for my phone, fingers shaking as I dialed a number. Dad? It's me. I need your help. I stared at the business card in my hand, my stomach churning. Discreet Investigations was embossed in gold lettering, a stark contrast to the turmoil in my heart. My father's words echoed in my head. Laura, honey, you need to know the whole truth. With trembling fingers, I dialed the number. A gruff voice answered. Malone speaking. Mr. Malone, this is Laura Jennings. I need your help. We arranged to meet at a cafe the next day. As I hung up, a wave of nausea hit me. Was I really going to spy on my own husband? The cafe was bustling when I arrived, but I spotted Malone immediately. He looked exactly like a private investigator should. Weathered face, sharp eyes, and a no-nonsense demeanor. Mrs. Jennings, he nodded as I sat down. Tell me what you need. I took a deep breath. I need evidence of my husband's affair. Concrete proof. Malone's expression didn't change. Consider it done. I'll need some information. For the next hour, I laid bare the intimate details of my life. Jack's schedule, his habits, even the make and model of his car. With each revelation, I felt a piece of my heart crumble. I'll be in touch within a week, Malone said as we parted. Try to act normal in the meantime. Normal. What a joke. But I managed to go through the motions, even as Jack's lies became more apparent. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, how had I been so blind? 5 agonizing days later, my phone buzzed with a text from Malone. Evidence collected. Meeting tomorrow? Same place. That night, as Jack mumbled another excuse about working late, I felt a surge of anger. Don't bother coming home, I snapped. I'm sure Molly would love to have you. Jack froze, his face paling. Laura, I held up a hand. Save it. I know everything. The next morning, I met Malone with a mix of dread and determination. He slid a manila envelope across the table. It's all there, he said gruffly. Photos, video, even some audio recordings. You sure you want to see this? I nodded, my throat tight. With shaking hands, I opened the envelope and began to sift through its contents. The first photo hit me like a punch to the gut. Jack and a younger woman, Molly, I presumed, locked in an embrace outside a restaurant. Their intimacy was undeniable. More photos followed, stolen kisses in a park, holding hands as they entered a jewelry store. My eyes blurred with tears as I recognized the necklace Molly wore, the one from the receipt that had started this whole nightmare. But it was the audio recording that truly broke me. Jack's voice, low and intimate, filled my ears. I love you, Molly. I've never felt this way before. Laura, she just doesn't understand me like you do. A sob escaped me, drawing concerned looks from nearby patrons. Malone discreetly pushed a box of tissues towards me. "There's more," he said quietly, "but I think you've seen enough." I nodded, unable to speak. As I gathered the damning evidence, a strange calm settled over me. The pain was still there, raw and bleeding, but alongside it was a steely resolve. "Thank you, Mr. Malone," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "You've given me exactly what I needed." As I left the cafe, clutching the envelope to my chest, I knew my next move. It was time to confront Jack, to force him to face the consequences of his actions. No more lies, no more excuses. My phone buzzed. A text from Jack. "We need to talk. I'm coming home early." Perfect timing. I typed a quick reply. "Yes, we do. I'll be waiting." The stage was set for a showdown. As I drove home, my mind raced with all the things I wanted to say, all the pain I wanted to inflict. But one thought rose above the rest. Whatever happened next, I would face it on my terms. Jack had underestimated me, but he was about to learn just how strong I could be. The front door clicked open, and I steeled myself for the confrontation. Jack walked in, his face a mask of practiced contrition. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it all. "Laura, we need to talk," he began, but I cut him off. "You're right, we do." I slapped the manila envelope on the coffee table. "Why don't you start by explaining these?" Jack's eyes widened as he leafed through the photos. His face cycled through shock, anger, and finally settled on a cold resignation. "So, you hired a private investigator." "I had to know the truth," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "though I guess I should thank you for making it so easy to catch you." He sank into the armchair, running a hand through his hair. "Laura, I never meant for it to go this far. Molly, she—" "Save it," I snapped. "I don't want to hear about your precious Molly. What I want to know is why. Why throw away 10 years of marriage?" Jack's eyes met mine, and I was shocked by the anger I saw there. "You really want to know why? Because I want a family, Laura, a real family with children, and you can't give me that." His words hit me like a physical blow. "We talked about adoption, about other options." "It's not the same," Jack shouted, standing up. "I want my own flesh and blood, a legacy. Molly understands that. She wants the same things I do." I felt my own anger rising to match his. "So that's it? I'm just a defective baby-making machine to you?" "That's not fair," Jack said, but his eyes betrayed him. "You know what's not fair?" I spat. "Throwing away a decade of love and commitment because your wife can't get pregnant. That's not fair, Jack." He had the decency to look ashamed, but only for a moment. "I'm sorry, Laura, but I've made my decision. I want a divorce." The word hung in the air between us, heavy and final. I'd known it was coming, but hearing it still felt like a knife to the heart. "Fine," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "If that's what you want." Jack nodded, then reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. "I've already spoken to a lawyer. These are the initial divorce papers. I think you'll find the terms fair." I stared at the envelope, not reaching for it. "How long have you been planning this?" He hesitated. "A few months. I wanted to make sure everything was in order before you ripped my life apart." I finished for him. Jack sighed. "Laura, please, this doesn't have to be ugly. My mother, Helen, she's offered to mediate." "Helen?" I laughed bitterly. "Let me guess, she's thrilled about all this." His silence was answer enough. Of course Helen would be overjoyed. She'd never approved of me, always hinting that Jack could do better. Now she had the daughter-in-law she'd always wanted. "She likes Molly," Jack said quietly. "They've become quite close." Something inside me snapped. I grabbed the nearest object, a framed photo of our wedding day, and hurled it at the wall. It shattered spectacularly, glass raining down on the carpet. "Get out," I hissed. "Get out of my house and take your damn papers with you." Jack looked startled by my outburst. "Laura, be reasonable." "Reasonable?" I advanced on him, fury giving me strength. "You want reasonable? How's this for reasonable? I'll see you in court, Jack, and I promise you I will fight you for every last penny." He backed away, hands raised in surrender. "You don't want to do this, Laura. Think about—" "I said get out!" I screamed, my voice raw with pain and rage. Jack hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He placed the divorce papers on the table and walked to the door. With his hand on the knob, he turned back. "I am sorry, Laura. For what it's worth, I did love you." As the door closed behind him, I collapsed to the floor, sobs racking my body. The life I'd known was over, shattered like the wedding photo on the floor. But as I cried, a small, determined voice in the back of my mind whispered, This isn't the end. It's just the beginning of my fight. The sound of a car door slamming jolted me awake. I blinked, disoriented, realizing I'd fallen asleep on the couch. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the mess from last night's confrontation. The shattered wedding photo lay accusingly on the floor. I stumbled to the window, my heart sinking as I watched Jack loading boxes into his car. This was really happening. He was leaving? Before I could think better of it, I yanked open the front door. "So that's it? You're just going to sneak away while I'm sleeping?" Jack froze, a box in his arms. "I didn't want to make this any harder than it needs to be, Laura." "Oh, how considerate of you," I spat, the words dripping with sarcasm. He sighed, setting the box down. "Look, I've left the divorce papers on the kitchen table. My lawyer will be in touch about—" "Your lawyer," I interrupted. "What happened to Helen mediating?" A flicker of guilt crossed Jack's face. "Mom thought it would be better to keep things professional." I laughed bitterly. Of course she did. Wouldn't want to risk me poisoning her precious son against her new favorite daughter-in-law. "Laura, please," Jack said, his voice strained. "Can we not do this?" "Do what, Jack?" "Acknowledge the fact that you're abandoning our marriage for a younger model who can give you the babies I couldn't?" His face hardened. "That's not fair. You know it's more complicated than that." "Is it?" I challenged. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks pretty simple. You found someone who could give you what you wanted, so you're throwing away 10 years like they meant nothing." Jack ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. "I never meant to hurt you, Laura, but we want different things. It's better this way." "Better for who?" I demanded, tears stinging my eyes. "For you? For Molly? For your mother? Because it sure as hell isn't better for me." He looked away, unable to meet my gaze. "I'm sorry. I truly am, but this is how it has to be." As Jack turned back to his car, something inside me snapped. I stormed back into the house, grabbing the first thing I could find, a vase he'd given me for our 5th anniversary. Without thinking, I hurled it at his retreating back. It missed, shattering on the driveway instead. Jack whirled around, shock written across his face. "Jesus, Laura! What the hell? Get out!" I screamed, my voice raw with pain and fury. "Get out, and don't you dare come back!" Neighbors were starting to peek out their windows, drawn by the commotion. I didn't care. Let them see. Let them all see what Jack had reduced me to. He raised his hands in surrender, backing towards his car. "I'm going. Just take care of yourself, Laura." I watched, trembling with rage and grief, as Jack got into his car and drove away. The finality of it hit me like a physical blow. He was gone. Really, truly gone. Stumbling back inside, I collapsed onto the couch, sobs racking my body. How had my life fallen apart so completely? Just days ago, I thought I had it all, a loving husband, a successful career, a beautiful home. Now, it was all ashes. As the tears subsided, leaving me feeling hollow and drained, my gaze fell on the divorce papers on the kitchen table. They seemed to mock me, a stark reminder of my new reality. With shaking hands, I reached for them. I had to face this head-on. No more crying, no more throwing things. It was time to be strong, to fight for myself. I picked up my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I found the number I needed. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Dad?" I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need your help. Do you know any good divorce lawyers?" As I listened to my father's concerned response, a steely resolve settled over me. Jack thought he could just walk away, that I'd roll over and accept whatever scraps he deigned to throw my way. He was about to learn just how wrong he was. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of my fight. The waiting room of Dr. Patel's office felt suffocating. I'd been here countless times before, each visit a reminder of my failure to conceive. Now, 2 weeks after Jack's departure, I sat here again, but for an entirely different reason. "Laura Jennings?" the nurse called, her voice jarring me from my thoughts. I followed her to the examination room, my stomach churning with more than just nausea. Dr. Patel entered moments later, her kind face creased with concern. "Laura, how are you feeling?" she asked, glancing at my chart. "Terrible," I admitted. "I've been sick for days. I thought it was stress from everything, but it's not getting better." Dr. Patel nodded sympathetically. "I see. Well, let's run some tests and see what's going on." As she drew blood and ordered other tests, my mind raced. Could it be? No, it was impossible. After years of trying, of heartbreak and disappointment, there was no way. An hour later, Dr. Patel returned, her expression unreadable. "Laura, I have your results." I braced myself, expecting the worst. "What is it? Is something wrong?" She took a deep breath. "Laura, you're pregnant." The world tilted on its axis. What? Pregnant?" Dr. Patel repeated, a smile breaking across her face. "About 6 weeks along." 6 weeks. My mind reeled, doing the math. It must have happened right before Jack left, during one of our last attempts to salvage our marriage. "But how?" I whispered, tears welling in my eyes. "We tried for so long." Dr. Patel squeezed my hand. "Sometimes, Laura, these things happen when we least expect them. Your body was under less stress, perhaps." Her voice faded into background noise as the reality sank in. I was pregnant, with Jack's child, the child he'd left me for not being able to provide. "Laura?" Dr. Patel's voice cut through my thoughts. "Are you all right?" I nodded, unable to speak. She continued, outlining next steps, scheduling follow-up appointments, but my mind was elsewhere, grappling with the enormity of this revelation. As I left the clinic, my phone buzzed. A text from Jack. "Lawyer wants to meet next week to finalize divorce terms. Let me know if that works for you." A hysterical laugh bubbled up in my throat. Oh, how the tables had turned. I typed back a quick "fine" before calling the one person I knew I could trust. "Mom," I said when she answered, "I need you and Dad to come over. Now." An hour later, I sat across from my parents in my living room, clutching a mug of tea like a lifeline. "Sweetheart," my mother said gently, "what's going on? You're scaring us." I took a deep breath. "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed was deafening. Then my father's voice, gruff with emotion. "Does Jack know?" I shook my head. "No one knows except you two. I just found out today." "Oh, Laura," my mother breathed, moving to sit beside me. "What are you going to do?" That was the million-dollar question, wasn't it? What was I going to do? Tell Jack and risk him coming back out of obligation? Keep it a secret and raise this child alone? The possibilities swirled in my mind, each more daunting than the last. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice breaking. I don't know." My father leaned forward, his eyes fierce with protective love. "Whatever you decide, we're here for you, all the way." As my parents enveloped me in a hug, I felt a surge of strength. This child, this miracle I'd longed for, was now my responsibility, my chance at the family I'd always wanted. In that moment, I made my decision. I would keep this baby, with or without Jack. I would fight for my child, for our future, with everything I had. "I'm keeping the baby," I said, my voice steady for the first time in weeks, "and I'm going to need a better lawyer." My parents exchanged a look of determination. "We'll call cousin Sarah." My father said, "She's the best family lawyer in the state." As they started making plans, I placed a hand on my still flat stomach. To this tiny life inside me, I made a silent promise. I will protect you, love you, and give you the best life possible, no matter what. The road ahead would be hard, but I was ready. This was the dawn of my new life, and I intended to face it head on. The conference room felt like a battlefield. On one side sat Jack and his lawyer, their faces impassive. On the other, I sat with Sarah, my cousin and now fierce legal advocate. My hand rested protectively over my slightly swollen belly, hidden beneath a loose blouse. "Let's begin," Sarah said, her voice crisp. "We're here to finalize the divorce terms." Jack's lawyer nodded, sliding a document across the table. "We believe these terms are more than fair, considering the circumstances." I scanned the paper, my blood boiling. Jack was offering a pittance in alimony, claiming most of our shared assets, and even trying to keep the house we'd bought together. "This is ridiculous," I spat. "You're trying to leave me with nothing." Jack finally met my eyes. "Laura, be reasonable. You know I was the primary breadwinner." "Reasonable?" I laughed bitterly. "Like you were reasonable when you threw away our marriage for a younger woman?" His lawyer intervened. "Let's keep emotions out of this. The facts are clear." "The facts?" I interrupted. "Here's a fact for you. I'm pregnant." The room fell silent, Jack's face drained of color. "What? That's impossible. We tried for years." "Well, it happened," I said, my voice steady. "Right before you left, so your fair terms, they need some serious adjustment." Jack's lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently. I could see the panic in Jack's eyes. "This changed everything. We'll need to reassess," his lawyer said finally, "in light of this development." Sarah nodded, a predatory gleam in her eye. "We thought you might." Now let's talk about real fairness. The next hour was a blur of negotiations, child support, custody arrangements, division of assets. Everything was on the table. Jack seemed shell-shocked, barely participating, as his lawyer fought for every inch. Finally, we reached an agreement. I would keep the house, receive substantial alimony and child support, and have primary custody. Jack would have visitation rights, but limited ones. As we prepared to sign, Jack spoke up. Wait, I want to be part of this child's life. I want joint custody. I felt a surge of rage. Now you want to be a father after leaving me because I couldn't give you children? That was different, he protested. I didn't know. Exactly, I cut him off. You didn't know, and you didn't care. You walked away. You don't get to waltz back in now that it's convenient. Jack's face hardened. I have rights. This is my child, too. Your rights, I laughed humorlessly. What about my rights when you were sleeping with Molly? When you let your mother treat me like dirt? With a mention of Helen seemed to deflate Jack. Laura, please, we can work this out. I shook my head. No, Jack, we can't. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it. I turned to Sarah. Add a clause. Neither Jack nor Helen can contact the child without my express permission. Jack's lawyer started to protest, but Sarah was already drafting the addition. It's within her rights, she said firmly, given the circumstances of the separation. As Jack signed the papers, his hand shaking slightly, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was done. I was free. Outside the office, Jack caught up to me. Laura, wait. Can't we talk about this? I turned to face him, one hand on my belly. There's nothing left to say, Jack. You wanted a family? Well, congratulations. You're going to be a father, but you lost the right to be a husband and partner when you walked out that door. His face crumpled. I made a mistake. I see that now. Please give me another chance. For a moment, I wavered. Then I remembered the pain, the betrayal, the night spent crying myself to sleep. No, I said firmly. This is my chance now. My chance at the family I always wanted, without you. As I walked away, leaving Jack standing alone on the sidewalk, I felt a mix of triumph and sadness. This wasn't how I'd imagined starting a family, but it was my reality now, and I was determined to make the best of it. I placed a protective hand on my stomach. It's just you and me now, little one, I whispered, and we're going to be just fine. The shrill cry of my son Ethan pierced through the peaceful Saturday morning. I rushed to his room, my heart racing. As I scooped him into my arms, a commotion outside caught my attention. Through the window, I saw a familiar car pulling into my driveway. My blood ran cold. Helen. Shh, it's okay, baby, I murmured to Ethan, even as panic rose in my throat. What was she doing here? The doorbell rang, followed by insistent knocking. Laura, I know you're in there. Open up. I clutched Ethan tighter, my mind racing. 2 years of peace, of building a life for just the two of us. And now this. Laura, Helen's voice grew more shrill. I have a right to see my grandson. No, you don't, I whispered, but my voice shook. The divorce agreement was clear. Neither Jack nor Helen could contact us without my permission. The knocking turned to pounding. If you don't open this door, I'm calling the police. A hysterical laugh bubbled up inside me. Go ahead. I called out, finding my voice. I'm sure they'd love to hear how you're violating a court order. There was a moment of silence, then Helen's voice, dripping with venom. You can't keep him from us forever, Laura. He's Jack's son, too. I felt a surge of protective rage. He stopped being Jack's son the moment he walked out on us. You bitch, Helen screamed. I heard a crash. She must have thrown something at the door. Ethan began to wail again, frightened by the noise. I bounced him gently, trying to calm him even as my own heart raced. It's okay, sweetie, I soothed. Grandma's just leaving. But Helen wasn't leaving. I could hear her on the phone, her voice rising in pitch. Yes, officer. I'm trying to see my grandson, and his mother is refusing to let me in. It's 1852 Maple Street. Please hurry. My hands shook as I reached for my own phone. I dialed Sarah's number, praying she'd pick up on a Saturday. Laura? Sarah answered, sounding concerned. What's wrong? Helen's here, I said, my voice trembling. She's demanding to see Ethan. She's called the police. Stay calm, Sarah said, her lawyer voice kicking in. Don't open the door. I'm on my way. If the police arrive before me, show them the court order. It's in the blue folder in your study, remember? I nodded, then realized she couldn't see me. Okay, thank you, Sarah. As I hung up, I heard sirens in the distance. This was really happening. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation to come. I carried Ethan downstairs, retrieving the blue folder from my study. Through the window, I could see a police car pulling up. Helen was gesticulating wildly, pointing at the house. The officer approached my door, knocking firmly. "Ma'am, this is Officer Rodriguez. Can you please open the door?" With shaking hands, I unlocked the door, Ethan on my hip and the folder clutched to my chest. "Officer," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "I have a court order here prohibiting this woman from contacting me or my son without my express permission." I handed him the document. As he read it, Helen pushed forward, her face contorted with rage. "That's my grandson," she shrieked. "You can't keep him from me." The officer held up a hand, silencing her. "Ma'am, this order is clear. You're in violation by being here." Helen's face crumpled. But he's family. Laura, please, just let me see him." For a moment, I wavered. Then I remembered the pain, the betrayal, the nights spent crying while pregnant and alone. "No," I said firmly. "You lost that right when you supported Jack abandoning us. Officer, I want to press charges for harassment." Helen's wail of anguish was cut off by Sarah's arrival. As my cousin-turned-lawyer took charge of the situation, I retreated inside with Ethan, my legs finally giving out as I sank onto the couch. I hugged my son close, tears streaming down my face. We'd weathered this storm, but at what cost? And how many more battles lay ahead? As I heard Helen being led away, still protesting, I made a silent vow. No matter what it took, I would protect Ethan. From Helen, from Jack, from anyone who threatened our peace. We'd come too far to let anyone tear us apart now. The cafe bustled with the morning rush, but I barely noticed as I stared at the text message on my phone. It was from Sarah, my lawyer and cousin. "Jack's filing for increased visitation. Hearing set for next month. Call me ASAP." My hands shook as I set the phone down. After 3 years of relative peace, Jack was making a move. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. "Mommy, can I have more juice?" Ethan's voice cut through my panic. I looked at my son, his face smeared with syrup from his pancakes, and felt a surge of protective love. "Of course, sweetie," I said, forcing a smile. As I poured his juice, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Laura?" A woman's voice, hesitant and familiar. It's Molly." I nearly dropped the phone. "Molly? What do you want?" There was a pause, then a shaky breath. "I thought you should know. Jack and I, we're getting divorced." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "What? Why?" "We've been trying to have a baby," Molly said, her voice thick with tears. "But I can't conceive. Jack couldn't handle it. He left last week." A hysterical laugh bubbled up inside me. The irony was almost too much to bear. "Laura?" Molly's voice was small. "I'm so sorry. For everything. I never should have." "Save it," I cut her off. "You made your choices. Now you have to live with them. Just like I did." I hung up, my mind reeling. Jack leaving Molly for the same reason he'd left me. It felt like cosmic justice, but it brought me no joy. As I looked at Ethan, happily munching on his breakfast, a realization hit me. This was my chance. With Jack's life in shambles, I could push for full custody. No more visitation battles, no more fear of Helen's interference. I dialed Sarah's number. "I just heard from Molly. Jack left her. I want to file for full custody." Sarah's sharp intake of breath was audible. "Laura, are you sure? This could get ugly." "I'm sure," I said, my voice steady. "It's time to end this, once and for all." The next month was a whirlwind of legal preparations and sleepless nights. Finally, the day of the hearing arrived. As I walked into the courtroom, I saw Jack for the first time in years. He looked haggard, defeated. For a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy. Then I remembered everything he'd put me through, and my resolve hardened. The judge looked between us, her expression stern. "Mr. Jennings, you're seeking increased visitation. Mrs. Jennings, you're countering with a request for full custody. Let's hear your arguments." Jack's lawyer went first, painting a picture of a reformed man who'd made mistakes but deserved a second chance. When it was our turn, Sarah laid out our case methodically. Jack's abandonment, his pattern of leaving when things got tough, the stability I'd provided for Ethan. As the judge deliberated, Jack approached me. "Laura, please," he whispered, "don't take my son away from me. I've lost everything else." I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in years. I saw the man I'd once loved, the father of my child. But I also saw the man who'd broken my heart, who'd walked away when things got hard. You lost him the day you walked out on us, I said, my voice low but firm. I'm just making it official. The judge's decision was swift and final. Full custody granted to me, with Jack allowed supervised visitation twice a month. As she read out the terms, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was over. We were free. Outside the courtroom, I hugged Sarah tightly. Thank you, I whispered, for everything. She squeezed me back. You did this, Laura. You fought for yourself and for Ethan. I'm so proud of you. As I drove home, my mind raced with possibilities. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. No more looking over my shoulder, no more fear of Jack or Helen swooping in to disrupt our lives. I picked up Ethan from my parents' house, hugging him close. How about we go for ice cream, buddy? I suggested. His face lit up. Really? Can I have 2 scoops? I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. You can have as many scoops as you want. We're celebrating. As we sat in the ice cream parlor, Ethan happily devouring his sundae, I looked at my son and felt a surge of love and pride. We'd been through so much, but we'd come out stronger. This was our new beginning, our chance at the family I'd always dreamed of. It wasn't the path I'd expected, but sitting here with my son, I knew without a doubt this was exactly where I was meant to be. The doorbell chimed, shattering the peaceful Sunday afternoon. I froze, wooden spoon in hand, a pot of simmering marinara sauce momentarily forgotten on the stove. My husband Ethan's footsteps echoed down the hallway as he went to answer. Mom, I heard him say, surprise coloring his voice. What are you doing here? My stomach clenched. Mary. My mother-in-law's unexpected visits never boded well. I wiped my hands on my apron and stepped into the living room, plastering on a smile. Mary, what a lovely surprise, I said, hoping my voice didn't betray my unease. Mary stood in the doorway, her perfectly coiffed silver hair gleaming in the afternoon sun. Her eyes, sharp as ever, darted around the room before settling on me. Ava, dear, she said, her tone saccharine. I hope I'm not interrupting anything. Not at all, Ethan said, ushering her inside. We were just about to have dinner. Would you like to join us? I shot him a look, but he missed it, focused on helping his mother remove her coat. Oh, I wouldn't want to impose, Mary said, even as she settled herself on our sofa. I just needed to speak with you both about something important. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Is everything all right? I asked, perching on the arm of Ethan's chair. Is it Henry? Is he okay? Mary's face crumpled, and for a moment I saw genuine pain in her eyes. It's your father, she said, turning to Ethan. The doctor called this morning. His condition, it's worse than we thought. Ethan leaned forward, his face etched with concern. What do you mean, Mom? What did the doctor say? I reached out and squeezed his shoulder, my heart aching for him. Henry had been battling Parkinson's for years, but lately his decline had been more rapid. Mary dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. He needs more care than I can provide at home. The doctor... He's recommending a nursing facility. A nursing home? Ethan's voice cracked. But Dad always said he wanted to stay at home. I know, dear, Mary said, reaching out to pat his knee, but we have to think about what's best for him now. The facility the doctor recommended is excellent, but I knew what was coming before she said it. It's expensive, Mary finished, her eyes now fixed on me. Very expensive. The room fell silent, save for the distant bubbling of my neglected marinara sauce. I could feel the weight of Mary's gaze, the unspoken expectation hanging in the air. Ethan cleared his throat. How much are we talking about, Mom? Mary named a figure that made my breath catch. It was more than double our mortgage payment. We'll find a way, Ethan said immediately, ever the dutiful son. Won't we, Ava? I nodded, even as my mind raced through our finances. We had some savings, but not nearly enough to cover this kind of expense long term. Of course, I said, we'll do whatever it takes to make sure Henry gets the best care. Mary's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. I knew I could count on you both. You're such a blessing, Ava. I don't know what we'd do without you. Something in her tone made me uneasy, but I pushed the feeling aside. This was about Henry, about family. Whatever it took, we'd make it work. As Mary launched into details about the facility, I excused myself to check on dinner. In the kitchen, I stirred the sauce mechanically, my mind whirling. How were we going to afford this? What sacrifices would we need to make? The sound of breaking glass startled me from my thoughts. I rushed back to the living room to find Mary standing over the shattered remains of my favorite vase, a gift from my late mother. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "How clumsy of me." As I knelt to clean up the pieces, a shard nicked my finger. A drop of blood welled up bright red against my skin. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was an omen of things to come. The alarm blared at 5:30 a.m., jolting me awake. I groaned, my hand fumbling to silence it. Beside me, Ethan stirred but didn't wake. I envied his ability to sleep through anything. As I stumbled to the bathroom, the weight of our new reality settled on my shoulders. It had been 2 weeks since Mary's bombshell about Henry's care, and our lives had been turned upside down. The nursing facility costs were astronomical, and our savings were dwindling fast. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, noting the dark circles under my eyes. "You can do this," I whispered to myself. Today was my first day back at work after 7 years as a homemaker. The thought made my stomach churn with anxiety. By the time Ethan woke up, I was dressed in my new business attire, a far cry from my usual comfortable clothes. He blinked at me, confusion clouding his face for a moment before realization dawned. "Ava, you don't have to do this," he said, his voice still husky with sleep. "We can figure something else out." I forced a smile. "We've been over this, Ethan. It's the best solution. Besides, it'll be good for me to get back out there." He pulled me into a hug, and I breathed in his familiar scent, drawing strength from his embrace. "You're amazing, you know that?" he murmured into my hair. As I drove to my new job at a local real estate office, my phone buzzed. Mary's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated before answering. "Ava, dear?" Mary's syrupy voice filled the car. "I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." "I'm on my way to work, Mary. Is everything okay?" "Oh, yes, everything's fine. I just wanted to check if you'd sent this month's payment for Henry's care. The facility called, and I wouldn't want there to be any misunderstandings." My grip tightened on the steering wheel. "I transferred the money to your account last week, Mary, just like we agreed." "Did you? Oh, I must have overlooked it. I'll check again. Drive safely, dear." The call ended, leaving me with a knot in my stomach. Something about Mary's tone didn't sit right with me. At the office, I threw myself into learning my new role, grateful for the distraction. My coworkers were kind, if a bit curious about the new middle-aged recruit. By lunchtime, I was exhausted but feeling more confident. As I unwrapped my sandwich in the break room, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Ethan. "Hey, how's your first day going?" he asked. "It's going," I replied, trying to inject some enthusiasm into my voice. "How are you doing?" There was a pause. "I just got off the phone with the nursing facility. They said they haven't received our payment yet." My blood ran cold. "That's impossible. I transferred the money to your mom last week." "I know. I told them that. They said they'll look into it, but Ava, I'm worried. This isn't like Mom to forget something so important." I bit my lip, Mary's earlier call suddenly taking on a sinister tone. "Ethan, I think we need to talk to your mother. Something doesn't feel right." "What do you mean?" His voice sharpened. "Ava, if you're implying." "I'm not implying anything," I cut him off. "I just think we need to get to the bottom of this. Can you call her? See if she can meet us for dinner tonight?" He agreed, albeit reluctantly. As I hung up, my new boss, Sandra, poked her head into the break room. "Everything okay, Ava? You look a bit pale." I forced a smile. "Just some family stuff, nothing to worry about." But as I returned to my desk, worry gnawed at me. What if the money hadn't gone through? What if Mary had? No, I couldn't think like that. She was Ethan's mother, for heaven's sake. As the day wore on, my unease grew. By the time I left the office, my nerves were frayed. I dreaded the conversation ahead, but I knew we needed answers. Pulling into our driveway, I saw Mary's car already parked outside. My heart raced as I walked to the front door, steeling myself for what lay ahead. Little did I know, this dinner would be the beginning of a nightmare that would test the very foundations of our family. I sat across from Mary at our dining table, my fingers drumming nervously on the polished wood. Ethan paced behind me, his agitation palpable in the tense atmosphere. "Mom," Ethan began, his voice strained, "we need to talk about the nursing home payments." Mary's face remained impassive, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her wine glass. What about them, dear? I leaned forward, my eyes locked on Mary's. The facility called. They haven't received the money for this month. A flicker of something, surprise, guilt, crossed Mary's face before her usual mask of calm settled back into place. Oh, there must be some mistake. I'm sure I took care of it. Ethan stopped pacing and placed his hands on the back of my chair. Mom, Ava transferred the money to your account last week. We have the bank statement to prove it. Mary waved her hand dismissively. Well, you know how these things can be. Banks make mistakes all the time. My patience snapped. Mary, this isn't a bank error. The money left our account and went into yours. What happened after that? Her eyes narrowed, a hint of steel entering her voice. Are you accusing me of something, Ava? Before I could respond, Ethan intervened. No one's accusing anyone, Mom. We just need to figure out what happened to the money. Mary's demeanor suddenly shifted, her eyes filling with tears. Oh, Ethan, I'm so sorry. I should have told you sooner. My heart raced as I braced myself for what was coming. I had to use the money for an emergency, Mary said, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. Your cousin Sarah? You remember her, don't you? She called me in tears. Her husband left her and she was about to lose her house. I couldn't just stand by and do nothing. Ethan's grip on my chair tightened. Mom, that money was for Dad's care. How could you? I know, Mary interrupted, her voice quavering. I was going to pay it back, I swear. I just needed a little more time. I felt a surge of anger. Mary, why didn't you tell us? We could have figured something out together. She turned her teary gaze on me. I didn't want to burden you both. You've already done so much. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, frustration etched on his face. Mom, we need to fix this. The nursing home needs to be paid. Mary nodded, composing herself. Of course, dear. I'll take care of it first thing in the morning. I have some savings I can use. As she spoke, a thought niggled at the back of my mind. Something about this didn't add up. Mary, I said slowly, how did you transfer the money to Sarah so quickly? Bank transfers usually take a few days to process. Her eyes widened slightly, and I knew I'd caught her in a lie. Oh, well, I wired it to her. It was faster that way. Ethan looked between us, confusion clear on his face. Mom, what's going on? Mary's facade cracked just for a moment, and I saw a flash of calculation in her eyes. Then she burst into fresh tears. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. I have a problem. What kind of problem? Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Gambling, Mary choked out. I've been trying to stop, but I thought if I could just win big once, I could pay for your father's care and you wouldn't have to worry anymore. The room fell silent, the weight of Mary's confession hanging heavy in the air. Ethan looked shell-shocked, while I felt a mix of anger and pity swirling in my chest. We need to see your bank statements, I said firmly. All of them. We need to know exactly how much money is missing. Mary nodded meekly, all fight gone from her. Of course, I'll bring them over tomorrow. As she gathered her things to leave, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were only scratching the surface of Mary's deception. The road ahead looked rocky, and I wondered how our family would weather this storm. Ethan walked his mother to the door, their hushed conversation drifting back to me. As the door closed, he turned to me, his face a mask of pain and confusion. What are we going to do, Ava? He asked, his voice breaking. I stood and wrapped my arms around him, my mind already racing with possibilities. We'll figure it out, I promised, together. But as I held my husband, I couldn't help but wonder what other secrets Mary might be hiding, and how deep this rabbit hole truly went. The alarm blared at 5 a.m., and I groaned, my body aching from another restless night. It had been 2 weeks since Mary's confession, and the weight of our new reality pressed down on me like a physical force. I dragged myself out of bed, careful not to wake Ethan. He'd been working late, trying to secure a promotion to help cover his father's care. The guilt of my new job adding to his stress gnawed at me. In the kitchen, I brewed coffee and checked my phone. A text from Sandra, my boss, lit up the screen. Big client meeting today. Don't be late. I sighed, downing my coffee. The pressure to perform at work while managing our family crisis was overwhelming. As I rushed to get ready, Ethan stirred. Ava? He mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. Go back to sleep, honey, I whispered, kissing his forehead. I've got an early meeting. His eyes flickered open, concern etched on his face. "Did you hear from Mom?" I shook my head. Mary had been avoiding our calls since her confession, claiming she needed time to gather her financial records. Each day of silence only deepened my suspicions. "I'll try her again today," I promised, though the words felt hollow. The drive to work was a blur of anxiety and half-formed plans. How were we going to dig ourselves out of this mess? At the office, I threw myself into preparation for the client meeting. Maybe if I could land this account, the extra commission would help ease our financial burden. Midway through my presentation, my phone buzzed insistently in my pocket. I ignored it, focusing on the potential client's questions. When we finally broke for lunch, I checked my messages. 5 missed calls from Ethan, and a text that made my blood run cold. "Dad's being discharged. Nursing home says we're behind on payments. Call me ASAP." My hands shaking, I ducked into an empty conference room and called Ethan. "Ava, thank God," he answered, his voice strained. "They're threatening to send Dad home today if we don't pay up." "But that's impossible," I sputtered. "We gave Mary the money for this month's payment just last week." Ethan's bitter laugh cut through the line. "Yeah, well, it seems Mom's gambling problem is worse than we thought. I went to her house this morning. She's gone, Ava, packed up and left." The room spun around me. "Gone? What do you mean, gone?" "I mean she's vanished. Neighbors said they saw her leave with suitcases last night. Her phone's disconnected." I sank into a chair, my mind reeling. "Oh, Ethan. I'm so sorry. What are we going to do?" He sighed heavily. "I don't know. The nursing home needs $5,000 by end of day, or they're sending Dad home. We can't take care of him ourselves, Ava. He needs round-the-clock care." The enormity of our situation crashed over me. We'd emptied our savings account for last month's payment, believing Mary would handle this month. Now we were broke, with no way to care for Henry. "I'll figure something out," I said, my mind already racing. Just try to stall them. I'll be home as soon as I can." I hung up and stared at my reflection in the conference room window. The woman looking back at me seemed older, more determined than the person I'd been just weeks ago. A knock at the door startled me. Sandra poked her head in. "Ava, the clients are back. They're ready to sign." I took a deep breath, squaring my shoulders. "Sandra, I need a favor." "A big one." Her eyebrows rose. "What kind of favor?" "I need an advance on my commission. A big one, and I need it today." Sandra's expression softened. "Ava, what's going on?" In that moment, I made a decision. No more secrets, no more trying to handle everything alone. I told Sandra everything about Henry, about Mary's deception, about our desperate situation. When I finished, Sandra was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Okay, let's go close this deal. Then we'll talk about that advance." As I followed her back to the meeting room, a plan began to form in my mind. We'd get through this somehow. And when we did, Mary would have a lot to answer for. I squared my shoulders and plastered on a smile. It was time to fight for my family. The sterile smell of the nursing home assaulted my senses as Ethan and I walked down the corridor to Henry's room. It had been a month since Mary's disappearance, and the strain was showing on both of us. Dark circles shadowed Ethan's eyes, matching my own. "Ready?" I asked, squeezing Ethan's hand. He nodded grimly, pushing open the door. Henry sat in his wheelchair by the window, his once robust frame now frail and hunched. His eyes lit up when he saw us, a spark of recognition that both warmed and broke my heart. "There's my boy," Henry said, his voice weak but filled with affection. "And Ava, pretty as a picture." I leaned down to kiss his cheek, noting how papery his skin felt. "How are you feeling today, Henry?" He waved a trembling hand. "Oh, same old, same old. Where's Mary? She usually comes with you." Ethan and I exchanged a glance. We decided not to tell Henry about Mary's betrayal, fearing the shock would be too much for his fragile health. "Mom's not feeling well today," Ethan lied smoothly. "She sends her love." Henry nodded, seemingly satisfied. As Ethan wheeled him out to the garden for some fresh air, I hung back, cornering Henry's nurse. "How's he really doing?" I asked in a low voice. The nurse, Sarah, hesitated. "He has good days and bad days. But honestly, Mrs. Thompson, we're concerned about his rapid decline. Has he been under any unusual stress lately?" I bit my lip, guilt gnawing at me. "Not that we know of. Why?" Sarah lowered her voice. "It's just, well, Mrs. Thompson Sr. was here last week. They had quite a heated discussion. Mr. Thompson was very agitated afterward." My blood ran cold. Mary was here? When? Last Tuesday. I assumed you knew. I forced a smile. Of course. Thank you, Sarah. My mind raced as I joined Ethan and Henry in the garden. Mary had been here, despite telling us she was out of state sorting things out. What game was she playing? As we said our goodbyes, Henry grasped my hand. Ava, dear, could you do me a favor? Anything, Henry. His roomy eyes met mine, suddenly sharp. Check the safe in my old study. The combination is your wedding date. There's something there you and Ethan need to see. Before I could question him further, a coughing fit overtook him. By the time the nurses had him settled, he'd drifted off to sleep. On the drive home, I filled Ethan in on what I'd learned. I can't believe she came here. Ethan fumed, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. What was she thinking? I don't know. I said, but I think we need to check that safe. An hour later, we stood in Henry's musty study. The safe creaked open, revealing a stack of documents. What is all this? Ethan muttered, leafing through the papers. My eyes widened as I scanned a bank statement. Ethan, look at this. It's an offshore account in your mom's name. There's over $500,000 here. Ethan snatched the paper, his face paling. That's impossible. Where would she get this kind of money? As we dug deeper, a sickening picture emerged. False invoices, doctored bank statements, a web of lies stretching back years. She's been embezzling from Dad's company, Ethan whispered, horror etched on his face. All this time. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Mr. Thompson took a turn. Come quickly. I showed Ethan the message, our eyes meeting in shared anguish. What do we do? I asked, my voice barely audible. Ethan's jaw clenched, a determination I'd never seen before hardening his features. We go to the police. Then we go to Dad. It's time to end this. As we rushed out the door, the weight of the decision pressed down on me. We were about to shatter what was left of our family. But as I thought of Henry, alone and declining in that sterile room, I knew we had no choice. The storm we'd been dreading was finally breaking, and we had to face it head-on. The shrill ring of my phone jolted me awake. I fumbled for it in the darkness, my heart racing as I saw the nursing home's number flash on the screen. Mrs. Thompson? The night nurse's voice was tense. You need to come immediately. Your father-in-law has taken a turn for the worse. I shook Ethan awake, and we dressed in a frantic blur. The drive to the nursing home was a nightmare of screeching tires and red lights that seemed to last an eternity. We burst into Henry's room to find a flurry of activity. Doctors and nurses swarmed around his bed, their urgent whispers filling the air. What's happening? Ethan demanded, his voice cracking. A doctor turned to us, his face grave. Mr. Thompson has suffered a severe stroke. We're doing everything we can, but... His words faded into background noise as I watched Henry's chest rise and fall with painful effort. How had things gone so wrong so quickly? Hours crawled by as we waited for news. As dawn broke, the doctor returned, looking exhausted. We've stabilized him, he said, but he'll need specialized care, more than we can provide here. Relief flooded through me, quickly followed by a new wave of anxiety. What kind of care? I asked. There's a facility that specializes in stroke recovery, the doctor explained. But it's expensive, and they require payment up front. Ethan and I exchanged a look of despair. We drained our savings paying for Henry's care here. How could we possibly afford something even more expensive? How much? Ethan asked, his voice hollow. The figure the doctor named made my knees weak. It was more than we made in a year. We'll figure it out, I said, squeezing Ethan's hand. Somehow. But as we left the hospital, reality crashed down on us. We had no money, no assets to liquidate, and Mary had vanished with the embezzled funds. Maybe we could get a loan, I suggested weakly as we entered our house. Ethan shook his head, slumping onto the couch. With what collateral? We're already mortgaged to the hilt. I was about to respond when Ethan's phone rang. He answered, his face darkening as he listened. What is it? I asked as he hung up. That was the nursing home, he said, his voice trembling with rage. They're threatening to discharge Dad. Apparently, we're 3 months behind on payments. What? I gasped. But that's impossible. We've been transferring the money to your mom's account every month. Ethan's eyes widened with sudden realization. Mom, he growled. She never paid them. She took the money and ran. The room spun around me as the full weight of Mary's betrayal hit home. Not only had she stolen from Henry's company, but she'd also taken the money meant for his care. We need to go to the police, I said, reaching for my phone. Wait, Ethan said, grabbing my wrist. His eyes bore into mine, filled with an emotion I couldn't quite place. Before we do that, I need to know something. My stomach clenched. What? Did you know, he asked, his voice low and dangerous. About the money, about Mom's embezzlement. Did you know any of it? I recoiled as if he'd slapped me. How can you ask me that? Of course I didn't know. Then why were you so suspicious of her? He pressed. You've been uneasy about Mom for weeks. Why? Anger and hurt warred within me. Because I could see what you couldn't, I shouted. I saw how she manipulated you, how she always had an excuse for everything. I knew something was wrong, but I never imagined it was this bad. Ethan's face crumpled, the fight draining out of him. I'm sorry, he whispered. I don't know who to trust anymore. As I watched my husband break down, the man I loved reduced to a shell of himself by his mother's betrayal, something inside me hardened. This ended now. I picked up my phone again, my fingers steady as I dialed. Hello, police? I'd like to report a crime. The police station buzzed with activity as Ethan and I sat in hard plastic chairs, waiting. My hands trembled as I clutched a manila folder filled with bank statements and the damning documents we'd found in Henry's safe. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson? A detective approached, his face grim. We've located your mother. Ethan stood abruptly, his voice tight. Where is she? She's being brought in for questioning. We'll need you both to stay here. As if on cue, the station doors burst open. 2 officers escorted Mary in, her usually immaculate appearance disheveled. Her eyes locked onto us, a mixture of defiance and fear flashing across her face. Ethan, darling, she called out, her voice sickly sweet. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. I felt Ethan stiffen beside me. No, Mom, he said, his voice cold. No more lies. The detective ushered us into separate rooms for questioning. Hours passed as we recounted every detail, every suspicion, every betrayal. By the time we emerged, I felt wrung out, my emotions raw and exposed. In the hallway, we came face to face with Mary again. This time, her mask had slipped, revealing the desperation beneath. You don't understand, she hissed, her eyes darting between us. I did it for us, for the family. I couldn't hold back anymore. For the family, I spat. You stole from your own husband, left him to suffer without proper care. How dare you claim this was for anyone but yourself? Mary's face contorted with rage. You, she snarled, jabbing a finger at me. You turned my son against me. This is all your fault. Ethan stepped between us, his voice shaking with anger. No, Mom, this is your fault. Your lies, your theft, your betrayal. It ends now. As the officers led Mary away, her shouts echoing down the hallway, my phone buzzed. It was the nursing home. Mrs. Thompson, we need to discuss your father-in-law's situation urgently. My heart sank. In the chaos of Mary's arrest, we'd forgotten about Henry's precarious condition. We can't keep him here without payment, the administrator said, her voice apologetic but firm. We'll have to discharge him tomorrow. Panic clawed at my throat. Please, we just need a little more time. We're sorting out a financial situation. I'm sorry, but we've already extended too much credit. If you can't pay by noon tomorrow, we'll have to release him to your care. The call ended, leaving me shell-shocked. Ethan looked at me, his face ashen. What are we going to do? He whispered. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. We fight. We've come this far. We're not giving up now. We spent the night making frantic calls, to banks, to lawyers, to anyone who might be able to help. But as dawn broke, we were no closer to a solution. Exhausted and desperate, we arrived at the nursing home. Henry was awake, his eyes clearer than they had been in weeks. I heard you found the safe, he said, his voice weak but steady. Ethan nodded, tears in his eyes. Dad, I'm so sorry, we had no idea. Henry held up a trembling hand. No apologies. You did what needed to be done. He fumbled with something on his bedside table, producing a small key. There's one more thing you need to see. In my old desk, bottom drawer, this key will open it. Hope flared in my chest. Could this be the solution we so desperately needed? As we prepared to leave, a commotion erupted in the hallway. Mary's voice, shrill and angry, cut through the air. You can't keep me from my husband. I have rights. Ethan and I exchanged panicked looks. How had she gotten here? What more damage could she do? As Mary burst into the room, her eyes wild, I knew we were facing our final confrontation. Everything we had fought for, everything we had endured, had led to this moment. With Henry watching, His face a mask of sorrow and resolve. I squared my shoulders. Whatever came next, we would face it together. The tension in Henry's hospital room was palpable as Mary stood before us, her eyes wild with desperation. Ethan moved protectively in front of his father's bed while I clutched the small key Henry had given us. "You ungrateful children," Mary spat, her voice dripping with venom. "After everything I've done for this family." Henry's weak voice cut through the chaos. "Enough, Mary, it's over." We all turned to look at him, surprised by the strength in his tone. He struggled to sit up, and I rushed to help him. "Henry, please," Mary pleaded, her demeanor suddenly shifting. "You don't understand. I was trying to secure our future, our comfort." Henry's eyes, once clouded with illness, now shone with clarity and determination. "By stealing from me? From our son? No, Mary, I understand perfectly." He turned to Ethan and me. "The desk," he said. "Go now." We didn't need to be told twice. Leaving Henry under the watchful eye of the nursing staff, we raced to his old study. With trembling hands, I inserted the key into the bottom drawer of his antique desk. Inside, we found a thick envelope. Ethan tore it open, revealing stacks of documents, stock certificates, property deeds, and a handwritten letter from Henry. "He knew," Ethan whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "He knew what Mom was doing all along. He was gathering evidence." As we pored over the documents, the full extent of Mary's deception became clear. She hadn't just been embezzling from the company. She'd been siphoning money from their personal accounts for years, building a secret nest egg for herself. Armed with this new information, we returned to the hospital. The police had arrived, alerted by the staff to Mary's unauthorized presence. "Mom," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the pain in his eyes. "It's time to tell the truth. All of it." Faced with the overwhelming evidence and Henry's unwavering gaze, Mary's carefully constructed facade finally crumbled. She confessed to everything, the embezzlement, the lies, the manipulation. As the police led her away, she turned to us one last time. "I only wanted what was best," she said, her voice small and broken. "No, Mary," I replied, finding strength I didn't know I possessed. "You only wanted what was best for yourself." In the days that followed, we worked tirelessly to set things right. With Henry's hidden assets, we were able to cover his medical expenses and move him to a better facility closer to our home. The company initiated legal proceedings against Mary, and Henry filed for divorce. Weeks turned into months, and slowly our lives began to find a new rhythm. Ethan and I grew closer through the ordeal, our bond strengthened by the trials we'd faced together. One crisp autumn morning, as we sat with Henry in the garden of his new nursing home, I felt a flutter in my stomach. Placing a hand over my abdomen, I knew with sudden certainty that our family was about to grow in an unexpected way. "Ethan," I said, my voice trembling with joy, "I'm pregnant." The look of pure happiness that spread across his face was mirrored in Henry's eyes. As Ethan embraced me, I caught sight of Henry wiping away a tear. "Life goes on," Henry said softly, "and love, true love, it endures." In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of family, the family we had fought so hard to protect, I felt a profound sense of peace. We had weathered the storm, exposed the lies, and come out stronger on the other side. Mary's betrayal had nearly torn us apart, but in the end, it had brought us closer together. As I looked forward to the future, to the new life growing inside me, I knew that we could face anything as long as we had each other. The path ahead wouldn't be easy. There were still legal battles to fight, wounds to heal, and trust to rebuild. But for the first time in months, I felt hope, bright and unshakable, blooming in my chest. Our story wasn't over. It was just beginning, and this time we would write it together, with honesty, love, and the unbreakable bonds of true family. The little pink plus sign stared back at me, a beacon of hope and joy in the sterile bathroom light. I couldn't stop the smile from spreading across my face. After months of trying, Daniel and I were finally going to be parents. I clutched the pregnancy test to my chest, my heart racing with excitement. "Daniel," I called out, rushing down the stairs. "Daniel, I have amazing news." The living room was empty, but I could hear muffled voices coming from the kitchen. As I approached, Daniel's deep laugh mingled with a familiar, shrill cackle that made my stomach drop. No, it couldn't be. I rounded the corner to find my husband and his mother, Evelyn, sitting at our kitchen table, surrounded by moving boxes. "Miranda, there you are," Daniel said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Mom's here." Evelyn's perfectly coiffed silver hair gleamed as she turned to me. Her lips curled in what I'm sure she thought was a welcoming smile. "Miranda, dear, how lovely to see you." I forced a smile, my hand instinctively moving to cover my still flat stomach. "Evelyn, what a surprise! I didn't know you were visiting." Daniel cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. "Actually, honey, Mom's not just visiting. She's moving in with us." The world tilted on its axis. "What?" I managed to choke out. "Now, Miranda," Evelyn cooed, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Daniel and I thought it would be best if I was here to help out. You're so busy with your little teaching job, after all." I turned to Daniel, searching his face for any sign that this was all some cruel joke. "When exactly were you planning on telling me about this?" He at least had the decency to look sheepish. "I was going to tell you tonight, sweetheart. It all happened so fast. Mom's lease was up, and well, we have the spare room." "The nursery," I whispered, my hand tightening around the pregnancy test hidden behind my back. "What was that, dear?" Evelyn asked, her eyes narrowing. I straightened my spine, meeting her gaze. "Nothing. Daniel, can I speak with you privately for a moment?" We stepped into the hallway, and I could feel Evelyn's eyes boring into my back. "Daniel, how could you make this decision without talking to me first?" I hissed, trying to keep my voice low. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I once found endearing. "Miranda, she's my mother. What was I supposed to do, let her be homeless?" "That's not the point, and you know it," I said, my frustration mounting. "We're supposed to be partners. We make decisions like this together." I know. "I'm sorry," he said, but his apology felt hollow. "Look, it's just temporary, okay? Until she finds a new place." I wanted to argue further, to tell him about the baby growing inside me, but the words stuck in my throat. This should have been a moment of celebration, not conflict. "Fine," I said, defeated, "but we need to talk about this more later." As we re-entered the kitchen, Evelyn was unpacking a box, filling our cabinets with her gaudy china. "Oh, Miranda," she said, not bothering to look at me, "I hope you don't mind, but I've taken the liberty of rearranging things a bit. This kitchen could use a woman's touch." I bit my tongue, tasting blood. "Actually, Evelyn, I'd prefer if you didn't." "Nonsense, dear," she interrupted, waving a dismissive hand. "You'll see, this will be so much better. Now, where do you keep your good silver? The set I saw earlier was rather quaint." I watched in horror as she systematically dismantled the kitchen I had so carefully organized. Daniel stood by, silent and useless, as his mother steamrolled over every protest I attempted to make. As the evening wore on, my joy at the pregnancy faded, replaced by a gnawing dread. How was I supposed to bring a child into this world when I couldn't even control what happened in my own home? Later that night, as I lay in bed next to a snoring Daniel, I placed a hand on my stomach and whispered a quiet promise. "Don't worry, little one. Mommy will figure this out, somehow." The morning's sickness hit me like a freight train, sending me rushing to the bathroom. As I knelt on the cold tile floor, heaving into the toilet, I heard Evelyn's voice outside the door. "Miranda, dear, are you all right in there?" I wiped my mouth, struggling to catch my breath. "I'm fine, Evelyn. Just not feeling well." The door creaked open, and Evelyn's perfectly manicured hand appeared, holding a glass of water. "Here, drink this. It'll settle your stomach." I accepted the water gratefully, but as I reached for it, my eyes caught sight of something on the vanity. My driver's license was peeking out from beneath Evelyn's makeup bag. "What's my ID doing here?" I asked, my voice hoarse. Evelyn's eyes widened for a split second before her face smoothed into a mask of innocence. "Oh, I must have accidentally swept it up with my things when I was tidying earlier. Silly me." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As Evelyn left, I quickly checked my wallet. My bank book was missing too. Later that day, I cornered Daniel in his home office. "We need to talk about your mother," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He sighed, not looking up from his computer. "What is it now, Miranda?" "I found my ID in her things, and my bank book is missing. Don't you think that's strange?" Daniel finally met my gaze, his expression a mixture of exasperation and disbelief. "Are you seriously accusing my mother of stealing? She's probably just trying to help organize things." By taking my personal documents? I countered, my frustration mounting. Miranda, you're being paranoid, he said dismissively. Mom's just trying to help. Maybe you misplaced your bank book. I opened my mouth to argue further, but a wave of nausea washed over me. I stumbled, catching myself on the edge of his desk. Daniel's face softened slightly. Are you okay? You've been sick a lot lately. This was my chance. I took a deep breath, ready to share the news of my pregnancy, but before I could speak, Evelyn's voice rang out from downstairs. Daniel, honey, can you come help me with something? He stood up immediately. We'll talk later, okay? Try to get some rest. As he left the room, I felt a tear slip down my cheek. How had my life become this? My husband more concerned with his mother's needs than his wife's well-being. That evening, I sat at the dinner table, pushing food around my plate, as Evelyn regaled us with stories of Daniel's childhood. And then little Daniel said, Mommy, when I grow up, I want to marry you. Evelyn cackled, reaching out to pinch Daniel's cheek. He laughed along with her, seemingly oblivious to my discomfort. I set down my fork, my appetite completely gone. If you'll excuse me, I murmured, standing up. But you've hardly touched your food, Evelyn said, her voice laced with false concern. Are you watching your figure, dear? You have been looking a bit puffy lately. I froze, my hand instinctively moving to my stomach. I'm just not feeling well, I managed to say. As I turned to leave, I caught sight of something poking out of Evelyn's purse on the counter. The corner of my bank book was just visible. My heart raced as I approached, casually reaching for a glass of water. In one swift motion, I snatched the bank book and slipped it into my pocket. Miranda? Daniel called. What are you doing? I turned, forcing a smile. Just getting some water. I think I'll go lie down. As I climbed the stairs, I could hear Evelyn's voice, low and insistent. Daniel, I'm worried about Miranda. She's been acting so strange lately. Do you think she might be unstable? I clutched the railing, my knuckles turning white. This woman was trying to turn my husband against me, and worse, she was succeeding. In the safety of our bedroom, I opened the bank book with shaking hands. My blood ran cold as I saw unfamiliar transactions, large withdrawals I had never made. At that moment, I knew. This wasn't just about Evelyn moving in. This was war, and I was fighting for my marriage, my home, and the future of my unborn child. The smell of bacon wafted up the stairs, turning my stomach. I groaned, pushing myself out of bed. Another day in this house of horrors. As I made my way downstairs, I heard Daniel and Evelyn's voices in the kitchen. Now, Daniel, Evelyn cooed, a man needs a hearty breakfast. Miranda should be up making this for you. I paused at the bottom of the stairs, my blood boiling. Mom, Miranda's been feeling under the weather lately, Daniel replied, his tone apologetic. Nonsense, Evelyn scoffed. In my day, we didn't let a little queasiness stop us from taking care of our husbands. I'd heard enough. I stormed into the kitchen, startling them both. Good morning, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. I see you're discussing my shortcomings as a wife. Daniel at least had the decency to look ashamed. Evelyn, however, merely raised an eyebrow. Well, if the shoe fits, dear. I turned to Daniel, my patience wearing thin. And what do you think about this, Daniel? Do you agree that I should be up at the crack of dawn, slaving over a hot stove for you? He shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. Miranda, you know that's not what we meant. Oh, I think that's exactly what you meant, I snapped. Well, let me make something clear. I am your wife, not your servant. And you, I turned to Evelyn, are a guest in our home. It's about time you started acting like one. Evelyn's face turned an alarming shade of red. How dare you speak to me like that? Daniel, are you going to let her talk to your mother this way? Daniel looked between us, clearly torn. Ladies, please, can't we all just get along? I laughed bitterly. Get along? Your mother has been undermining me since the moment she moved in, and you've done nothing but enable her. Now, Miranda, Daniel started, his tone patronizing, I think you're overreacting. Mom's just trying to help. Help? I exploded. Is that what you call it? She's taken over our home, criticized everything I do, and now she's trying to turn you against me, and you're letting her. Daniel's face hardened. That's enough, Miranda. I won't have you disrespecting my mother like this. I stared at him, shocked. Your mother? What about your wife? What about our family? What family? Evelyn interjected. All I see is a woman who can't even take care of her husband properly. Something inside me snapped. Oh, I'll show you family, I hissed, my hand moving to my stomach. I'm pregnant, you insufferable witch. The kitchen fell silent. Daniel's jaw dropped and Evelyn's eyes narrowed to slits. Pregnant? Daniel stammered. Why didn't you tell me? I've been trying to, I said, my voice breaking. But you've been too busy catering to your mother's every whim to notice anything about me. Evelyn recovered quickly, her shock morphing into a saccharine smile. Oh, how wonderful, Daniel. You're going to be a father. We must start preparing right away. Miranda, dear, you'll need to cut back on work. A mother's place is in the home, after all. I whirled on her. No, absolutely not. I love my job and I'm not giving it up. But who will take care of the baby? Evelyn pressed. Surely you don't expect Daniel to change diapers and warm bottles? I turned to my husband, praying he'd stand up for me, for us. Daniel? He ran a hand through his hair, looking conflicted. Well, honey, Mom has a point. Someone needs to be home with the baby. In that moment, I saw my future flash before my eyes. Trapped in this house under Evelyn's thumb, with a husband who'd never stand up for me, I couldn't let that happen. No, I said, my voice steady and cold. If that's how you both feel, then things need to change. Now. I grabbed my car keys from the counter. I'm going to work. When I get back, we're going to have a serious conversation about the future of this family. All of us. As I walked out the door, I heard Evelyn's voice behind me. Daniel, we can't let her treat us this way. Something must be done. I slammed the door, my hands shaking. This was far from over, but for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. I was fighting back, and I wasn't going to lose. The weeks following my pregnancy announcement were a blur of tension and exhaustion. My morning sickness had intensified, leaving me drained and weak. Yet Evelyn's demands never ceased, and Daniel's indifference grew more pronounced with each passing day. One evening I stumbled into the kitchen, my head pounding and my stomach churning. The sight that greeted me made my blood boil. Evelyn was at the stove, stirring a pot of what smelled like her infamous beef stew. The very smell that had been making me nauseous for days. Evelyn, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, I thought I asked you not to cook that. The smell makes me sick. She turned, her face a mask of innocence. Oh, I'm sorry, dear. I must have forgotten. Daniel mentioned he was craving it, and well, a good wife should cater to her husband's needs, don't you think? I gripped the counter, fighting back a wave of nausea. Where is Daniel? Working late again, poor dear. Evelyn cooed. He's been so stressed lately, I wonder why. The implication in her tone was clear. Before I could respond, a sharp pain shot through my abdomen. I gasped, doubling over. Evelyn's eyes widened in mock concern. Oh my, are you all right? Perhaps you should lie down. I'll take care of everything here. I wanted to argue, to stand my ground, but another wave of pain hit me. Defeated, I retreated to the bedroom. Hours later, I woke to raised voices downstairs. Groggy and disoriented, I made my way to the top of the stairs. Daniel, you need to talk some sense into that wife of yours, Evelyn was saying. She's not taking proper care of herself or this house. It's affecting you, I can tell. Mom, please, Daniel sighed. Miranda's pregnant. She's doing her best. Her best, Evelyn scoffed. When I was pregnant with you, I never let it interfere with my duties. That's what's wrong with women today, always making excuses. I'd heard enough. Swallowing my anger, I descended the stairs. Both of them fell silent as I entered the room. Miranda, Daniel started, his tone cautious. How are you feeling? Like I'm carrying your child while being treated like a burden in my own home, I snapped. How do you think I'm feeling? Evelyn clicked her tongue. Now, dear, there's no need for dramatics. We're all just concerned about you. I turned to her, my patience finally snapping. Concerned? You've done nothing but undermine and criticize me since you moved in. And you, I rounded on Daniel, have let her do it. I'm your wife, Daniel. We're having a baby. When are you going to start acting like it? Daniel's face hardened. That's enough, Miranda. Mom's right, you're being dramatic. Maybe if you tried a little harder. Tried harder? I interrupted, my voice rising. I'm growing a human being while working full-time and trying to keep this house running. What exactly would you like me to try harder at? Well, Evelyn interjected, for starters, you could. No, I held up a hand, silencing her. I don't want to hear another word from you. This is between me and my husband. Daniel stood, his face flushed with anger. Don't speak to my mother that way. She's only trying to help. Help, I laughed bitterly. Is that what you call this? Daniel, open your eyes. She's tearing us apart, and you're letting her. For a moment, I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes, but then Evelyn placed a hand on his arm, and his expression hardened once more. I think you need to calm down, he said coldly. Maybe you should go lie down. In that moment, something inside me broke. I looked at the man I had married, the father of my unborn child, and saw a stranger. You're right, I said, my voice eerily calm. I do need to lie down, but not here. I turned and walked out of the room, ignoring their calls behind me. As I climbed the stairs, my mind was made up. I couldn't stay in this house another night. It was time to take care of myself and my baby, even if it meant doing it alone. I stood in our bedroom, my hands shaking as I packed my suitcase. The weight of my decision pressed down on me, but I knew I had no choice. For the sake of my unborn child and my own sanity, I had to leave. As I zipped up the suitcase, the door creaked open. Daniel stood there, his face a mixture of confusion and anger. What are you doing? He demanded. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I'm leaving, Daniel. I can't stay here anymore. His eyes widened in disbelief. Leaving? But you're pregnant. You can't just leave. I can, and I will, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. I'm taking my maternity leave early and going to stay with my parents. Daniel's face flushed with anger. This is ridiculous, Miranda. You're overreacting. Mom and I are just trying to help you. I laughed bitterly. Help me? Is that what you call this? Your mother has taken over our home, undermined me at every turn, and you've done nothing but enable her. She's just trying to prepare you for motherhood, Daniel argued. You should be grateful for her experience. Grateful? I spat. For what? For making me feel worthless in my own home? For stealing my personal documents? For turning my husband against me? Daniel's face paled. What are you talking about? Mom would never. Open your eyes, Daniel, I shouted, my frustration finally boiling over. She's manipulating you. Can't you see that? And you're letting her destroy our marriage. Just then, Evelyn appeared in the doorway, her face a mask of concern. What's all this shouting about? It can't be good for the baby. I turned to her, my anger reaching new heights. Don't you dare pretend to care about this baby. You've done nothing but stress me out since you moved in. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. I've only been trying to help. If you can't appreciate that, maybe you're not ready to be a mother. Her words hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled back, my hand instinctively moving to protect my belly. Daniel stepped between us. Mom, that's enough. Miranda, you need to calm down. This stress isn't good for the baby. I looked at my husband, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. The man I married, the one who promised to stand by me through thick and thin, was gone. In his place stood a mama's boy who couldn't see past his mother's manipulations. I am calm, I said, my voice steady, and I'm leaving. I won't subject myself or my child to this toxic environment any longer. I grabbed my suitcase and pushed past them, heading for the stairs. Behind me I could hear Evelyn's voice dripping with false concern. Daniel, you can't let her leave. What will people think? A pregnant woman abandoning her home and husband. I whirled around, fury coursing through me. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm protecting myself and my child from you both. Daniel's face hardened. If you walk out that door, Miranda, don't expect to come back. His words hung in the air, a final ultimatum. I looked at him, searching for any sign of the man I fell in love with, but all I saw was Evelyn's puppet, dancing to her tune. Goodbye, Daniel, I said softly. I hope one day you'll see the truth. With that, I turned and walked out the front door. As I loaded my suitcase into the car, I could hear Evelyn's voice drifting from an open window. Let her go, Daniel. She'll come crawling back when she realizes she can't do this alone. I slammed the car door shut, my resolve strengthening. I'd show them both just how wrong they were. As I pulled out of the driveway, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in months, I could breathe freely. My hand rested on my belly, and I whispered a promise to my unborn child. It's just you and me now, little one, but we're going to be okay. We're going to be more than okay. The contractions hit me like a freight train, jolting me awake in the middle of the night. I gasped, clutching my swollen belly as pain radiated through my body. This was it. The moment I'd been dreading and anticipating for months had finally arrived. Mom, I called out, my voice strained. Dad, it's time. My parents burst into the guest room, their faces a mixture of excitement and concern. As another contraction gripped me, I couldn't help but think of Daniel. He should be here, holding my hand, telling me everything would be okay. But he wasn't, and that absence felt like a physical ache. The ride to the hospital was a blur of pain and anxiety. Between contractions, I fumbled with my phone, staring at Daniel's number. Should I call him? Did he even deserve to know? My finger hovered over the call button, but another wave of pain made the decision for me. Hours passed in a haze of agony and determination. My mother's steady presence beside me was a comfort, but it wasn't enough to fill the void left by Daniel's absence. As the final pushes approached, I felt a surge of anger and resolve. I would do this on my own. I didn't need him or his overbearing mother. With one last earth-shattering push, my baby entered the world. The sound of her first cry filled the room, and suddenly, nothing else mattered. "It's a girl," the doctor announced, placing my daughter on my chest. I looked down at her tiny, perfect face, tears streaming down my cheeks. "Hello, Lily," I whispered, the name I'd chosen months ago finally belonging to this beautiful, real person. As I held Lily, marveling at her tiny fingers and button nose, a nurse approached with a clipboard. "Miss Thompson, we need some information for the birth certificate. Father's name?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. I hesitated, my mind racing. Did Daniel deserve to be on the birth certificate? After everything that had happened, did he have the right to call himself Lily's father? Before I could answer, there was a commotion in the hallway. Raised voices echoed through the door, and my heart dropped as I recognized one of them. "I demand to see my daughter-in-law and grandchild." Evelyn's shrill voice carried into the room. "Ma'am, please calm down. Only immediate family is allowed at this time." A nurse tried to reason with her. "I am immediate family," Evelyn screeched. The door burst open, and there stood Evelyn, her face red with fury. Behind her, looking sheepish and conflicted, was Daniel. I instinctively tightened my hold on Lily, my body tensing. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, my voice hoarse from hours of labor. Evelyn marched into the room, her eyes fixed on the bundle in my arms. "We're here to see our granddaughter, of course. Daniel, look at her. She has your nose." Daniel stepped forward, his eyes wide as he took in the sight of his daughter. "Miranda, I'm sorry. I should have been here." "You're right, you should have," I said, my voice cold. "But you weren't. You chose your mother over your wife and child." Evelyn scoffed. "Don't be so dramatic, Miranda. We're here now, and that's what matters. Now let me hold my granddaughter." She reached for Lily, and something inside me snapped. "Don't you dare touch her," I hissed, pulling Lily closer. The room fell silent, tension thick in the air. Daniel looked between me and his mother, clearly torn. "Miranda, please," he pleaded. "We just want to be a part of her life." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the man I once loved. But I also saw the man who had let his mother come between us, who had chosen her over me time and time again. "I think you both need to leave," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. "Now." Evelyn's face contorted with rage. "You can't keep us from her. We have rights." As she lunged forward, my mother stepped between us, her voice sharp. "That's enough. Get out, both of you, before I call security." As they were ushered out of the room, I looked down at Lily, peacefully oblivious to the drama surrounding her birth. In that moment, I made a decision that would change all our lives forever. "Nurse," I called out, my voice firm. "For the birth certificate. No father listed." 3 months after Lily's birth, I stood on the doorstep of what used to be my home, my heart pounding. Lily was nestled against my chest in her carrier, blissfully unaware of the storm we were about to enter. I took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. Daniel opened the door, his eyes widening at the sight of us. "Miranda, you're back." "We need to talk," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. As we stepped inside, the familiar scent of Evelyn's perfume assaulted my senses. The house looked different, colder somehow. Evelyn emerged from the kitchen, her face a mask of false concern. "Oh, Miranda dear, you're looking well," she said, her eyes darting to Lily. "And this must be our little angel." I instinctively tightened my hold on Lily. "She's my daughter, Evelyn, not yours." Daniel cleared his throat. "Let's sit down and talk, shall we?" As we settled in the living room, I couldn't help but notice how out of place I felt in what was once my own home. Daniel sat across from me, while Evelyn hovered nearby, her eyes never leaving Lily. I've come to collect my things, I said, cutting straight to the chase, and to discuss our separation. Daniel's face fell. Miranda, please. Can't we work this out, for Lily's sake? Before I could respond, Evelyn interjected. Now, Miranda, let's not be hasty. Family is everything, after all. And little Lily needs her father. I felt my anger rising. Lily has been doing just fine without a father who chose his mother over his wife and child. Daniel flinched at my words. That's not fair, Miranda. I've been trying to reach out. Trying? I scoffed. A few text messages asking to see Lily doesn't count as trying, Daniel. Evelyn stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. Now listen here, young lady. You can't keep that child from us. We have rights. Rights? I interrupted, my voice rising. What about my rights? My right to feel safe and respected in my own home? My right to raise my daughter without your constant interference? As if sensing the tension, Lily began to fuss. I stood up to soothe her, and that's when I saw it, my missing bank book peeking out from under a stack of papers on the side table. My blood ran cold. What is that doing here? Daniel followed my gaze, his face paling. Miranda, I can explain. But I was already moving, snatching up the bank book. As I flipped through it, my worst fears were confirmed. Thousands of dollars, withdrawn without my knowledge or consent. How could you? I whispered, my voice shaking with rage and disbelief. Evelyn stepped forward, her face a picture of innocence. Now, Miranda, don't jump to conclusions. We were just safeguarding your money. Safeguarding, I exploded. You stole from me. Both of you. Daniel stood, his hands raised in a placating gesture. Miranda, please, we can explain everything. We were just trying to... To what, Daniel? I spat. To control me? To keep me dependent on you? Evelyn's facade finally cracked. You ungrateful little... That's enough, a new voice boomed from the doorway. We all turned to see Douglas, Daniel's father, standing there, his face a mask of fury. Dad? Daniel said, shocked. What are you doing here? Douglas strode into the room, his eyes blazing. I came to see my granddaughter, but it seems I've walked into a crime scene instead. He turned to me, his voice softening. Miranda, I am so sorry. I had no idea things had gotten this bad. As Douglas's words hung in the air, I felt a strange mix of vindication and despair. The truth was finally out, but at what cost? I looked at Daniel, the man I once loved, now a stranger to me. At Evelyn, her mask of benevolence finally shattered, and at Douglas, an unexpected ally in this mess. With Lily clutched tightly to my chest, I made a decision that would change all our lives forever. I'm calling the police, I said, my voice steady and resolved. This ends now. The room fell silent as I dialed 911, my hands shaking but my voice steady. Lily, sensing the tension, began to whimper. I bounced her gently, my eyes never leaving Daniel and Evelyn. Miranda, please, Daniel pleaded, his face ashen. We can work this out. But it was too late. Years of manipulation, gaslighting, and theft had led to this moment. As I reported the crime to the dispatcher, I watched the reality of the situation dawn on Daniel's face. The police arrived within minutes, their presence filling our once shared home. As they questioned us, the full extent of Evelyn's deceit came to light. Not only had she stolen my bank book and ID, but she had been systematically draining our accounts for months. Daniel's shock seemed genuine, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for him. He had chosen his mother over me, over our family, time and time again. As the officers led Evelyn away in handcuffs, she turned to Daniel, her face a mask of desperation. Daniel, darling, you can't let them do this to your mother. I watched, holding my breath, as Daniel stood frozen, torn between the woman who raised him and the family he had helped create. In that moment, I saw the boy he once was, desperate for his mother's approval, and the man he had failed to become. I'm sorry, Mom, he whispered, turning away from her. Evelyn's shrieks echoed through the house as she was escorted out, leaving an eerie silence in her wake. Douglas stepped forward, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. Miranda, I can't begin to express how sorry I am for all of this. I should have seen what was happening, should have stopped it. I nodded, grateful for his support, but too emotionally drained to speak. As the chaos subsided, I found myself alone with Daniel in what was once our bedroom. He sat on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. I've ruined everything, haven't I? He said, his voice barely above a whisper. I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt a strange mix of pity and resolve. Yes, Daniel, you have. But not just today. This has been happening for years. He raised his head, his eyes red-rimmed. I never meant for any of this to happen. I thought I was protecting our family. No, I said firmly. You were protecting your mother at the expense of your wife and child. And now it's time for me to protect Lily and myself. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I had to say next. I want a divorce, Daniel, and full custody of Lily. His shoulders slumped, but he didn't argue. I understand, he said softly. I'll give you whatever you need. As I packed the last of my things, Douglas approached me again. Miranda, I know I have no right to ask this, but please don't cut us out of Lily's life entirely. She deserves to know her family, flaws and all. I looked at this man, who had remained silent for so long, but had finally found his voice when it mattered most. We'll see, Douglas. For now, I need time and space to heal. With Lily secured in her car seat and my belongings packed, I stood at the threshold of what was once my home. Daniel and Douglas watched as I prepared to leave, the weight of everything that had transpired hanging heavy in the air. Goodbye, I said simply, closing the door on that chapter of my life. As I drove away, Lily cooed softly in the back seat. I caught her eye in the rearview mirror and felt a surge of love and determination. It's just you and me now, little one, I said, my voice strong and clear, but we're going to be okay. More than okay. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt free. Free from manipulation, free from doubt, free to be the mother and woman I was meant to be. As the sun set on this tumultuous day, I realized that sometimes the happiest endings come from the courage to write your own story, and that's exactly what Lily and I were going to do.